Avatar was a technological achievement. It was a visual splendor for audiences when it first released in 2009. I mean, it was so successful in capturing the wonder of Pandora that people legit became depressed because they couldn't return to it. It even made us think that 3D was gonna be a thing. Yet, as time ticked on, people forgot about Avatar and Pandora and the Na'vi. But how could they? I mean, the film, for the longest time, was the highest grossing film of all time. And it still is. But how could people forget a movie that made over $2 billion? Well, while it was a visual marvel, the story and characters were completely forgettable. Nobody truly cared about these characters in the story, and thus faded into obscurity until the trailer dropped for the new one. But could James Cameron, the mad genius behind Terminator 2 and Aliens, pull another out of his hat and make 3 great sequels in a row? Well, the first film was a grandiose adventure about a man finding his place in a very foreign world. And even though it was more or less Pocahontas in space, it was still fun and visually spectacular. It had a very specific focus on a love story, not just between these characters, but the world around it. This one, while visually phenomenal, feels cheaper somehow. Even though we do return to Pandora, it doesn't feel like it. Again, it's visually stellar, but it never has that special sauce the first had. A lot of these shots just look like it's back here on boring old Earth. And you could probably attribute that to the fact that this one focuses on water, if you couldn't tell by the title. Oh, how James Cameron loves to torture his cast and crew. I mean, if you sub out the blue cat people, it would be visually indistinguishable from any other movie based in water. There are even shots here that are ripped straight from Titanic. Technologically speaking, you can only get so far, but it can't make water not look like water, unless we're talking pre-2000s visuals. But we're not. Part of the beauty of the first was that the visuals helped to tell the story in some sense. Here, it just doesn't do that. It drops the love story aspects and focuses more on family drama. And there's only so much world building can do for you, and unfortunately conveying family drama isn't that. There's a bunch of storylines and characters that you have to follow, and none really stand out. The plot, despite it being from James Cameron, is hilariously disjointed. The main story revolves around Jake Sully and his family doing family stuff, I guess. They come under attack because the plot needs it to happen. I legit couldn't figure out why. Seriously, I was sitting there for 30 minutes trying to figure out why. Eventually, they are forced from their home to take refuge in this water place. Wait, the first film ended with an epic battle to protect their home, and the Na'vi won. Yet, the bad guys return here and do it with far less troops? Because the plot needs it to happen. Anyways, things happen and they befriend these whale things, but it turns out they're being poached. Why? Because another valuable commodity that they can siphon from them. How many hyper valuable commodities exist on this stupid planet? Anyways, the hero figures this out. How do they know? Because the heroes can talk to them using sign language. Oh god, I'm gonna need something a lot stronger than coffee. It's not hard figuring out what James Cameron is trying to tell you. Whaling is bad. And then it's a battle to save the whales. Honestly, it's just a rehash of the first plot, but what do you expect from a franchise that's allergic to original ideas? The first film already had a cartoonishly bad villain, but this one seems to make him even more cartoony. How do you make a bad villain worse? Simple. Just give the director full control with only yes men surrounding him and no one to challenge his opinion because that worked so well for the prequels. Didn't it, George Lucas?
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Anyways, Avatar 2 is a chore to get through. The plot either moves too fast or it's just too damn slow. There's no real sense of pace. I mean, the film is over 3 hours long, yet it could have easily been trimmed to about 2 hours. buckle up because the first 5 minutes literally throw you back into the world of Pandora with a quick recap of the first film, then stops suddenly to establish the characters. It's all very jarring and never gets better through its runtime, and it doesn't make sense because the story amounts to a family drama with space guns and space whales and space cats. Not in that particular order. I guess just stack it on top of the already growing pile of problems this film has. Speaking of which, I'm sure this was a complaint in the first, but how the hell does a hyper-advanced military that has the capability of crossing the universe get outgunned by a bunch of primitive beings with spears and bows? They have mech suits and the freaking ability to project their consciousness into another body. These blue cat people should have been squished. And while I'm on the logic gap train, why isn't Pandora destroyed? This planet should be well within the Roche limit of this other planet. For those of you that don't know, the Roche limit is how close a planet can be to a bigger one without being pulled into its gravitational field. Don't believe me? Here's what Earth looks like from our moon. And that's right in the sweet spot, mind you. Pandora should have been crushed by this other planet years ago. Where the frick is Neil deGrasse Tyson when you need him? Anyways, ultimately, it just feels dumb. And it's a shame because James Cameron is responsible for some of the best films of the 20th century. The dialogue, though, is clunky. The editing is choppy. Seriously, this took 13 years to make. Let me repeat that. 13 years. This should be polished to a spit shine. There's no excuses for it to be as choppy as it is. Ultimately, this feels like an exercise in futility. The first film, while wildly successful, seemed like a one-and-done deal. People had fun on Pandora for the first time around, and then immediately forgot its existence. The Avatar franchise was never poised to be the next Star Wars. It simply isn't smart enough, and people just don't care about these giant blue cat people to carry the franchise into the future. And yet, there's plans to make a third, and hopefully final, movie based on how this one ended. Thankfully, it'll be another 13 years before that comes. Isn't that right, James? But despite all of my negative criticisms, I would still rather watch this again than watch any of the modern Marvel content, because while Avatar 2 has its issues that I could just rail on for days, mind you, if you just kick back and turn off your brain, you can genuinely enjoy this. So yeah, that's my review on Avatar 2, guys. If you've seen it, let me know how you thought of it, and be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!